The Las Vegas Raiders got bad news when the Carolina Panthers benched Bryce Young, and now we're starting Andy Dalton. Coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why, if you rock with the silver and black, you should be nervous that the Panthers did the right thing in benching Bryce Young, and now they're going to be rolling with the red rifle. Before we get into all the reasons why that you should be a little bit nervous on this, if you're not already part of the Noti Gang, make sure you click that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on those notifications for daily Raiders videos, 100% free. And I got to give a shout out to the Noti Gang. Jonathan Martinez, Arctic Cruelty, Giovanni Granillo. If you don't know what the Noti Gang is, when we drop a video and you're one of the very first people that comment on that video, I see it. I recognize those names, and quite frankly, those are people that I want to be able to go out and I want to be able to rock with. The number one reason of why this is bad news for the Las Vegas Raiders, yeah, do it. The Panthers have been the worst team in the NFL, and this is actually a real picture of me side by side next to Bryce Young. But, the Panthers have been, and it's by far the worst team in the National Football League. We did a power rankings at Chat Sports. If you haven't checked it out yet, please go check it out over on our main YouTube channel. But, Carolina's been that bad, y'all. They have been the team where they're coming up on your schedule, and you look at that and you go, that's a dub. And that does not happen very often in the NFL. Bryce Young has been bad, but because Bryce Young has been bad, the entire Panthers offense has been bad, which then has also trickled down to the entire team being really freaking bad at football. I mean, look at these numbers so far. And again, it's only 2 weeks. I understand that. Up against New Orleans, up against the Chargers, total yards per game, 32nd in the NFL. Think about how bad the Raiders' offense has been with Luke Getsy outside of that fourth quarter against the Ravens. Their offense has been worse. Pass yards per game, 102. That's 31st. Rush yards per game, 29th. They are better than the Raiders in that category. Points per game, 6.5. 32nd in the National Football League. Ira Jackson, you're a madman. We'll talk about that after this. Panthers, though, they've been booty from top to bottom. The Panthers have been outscored 73-13 the first 2 weeks. Again, against good opponents, but 73-13, that's something that you see Alabama do to a Western Kentucky or something like that. A school that has no business going up against an SEC school. And I'm not trying to sit up here and say that the Raiders are by far the more superior team. The Raiders, with Bryce Young starting at quarterback, I do think are the far superior team. But anytime a QB gets benched at this point in the season, especially when you are the number one overall pick just a year ago, alarm bells got to start going off in your head if you're a Raiders fan. Why is this happening? Is it really that bad? And I'm not trying to compare Bryce Young to Josh McDaniels in any sense of the imagination, but when the situation gets to a boiling point and then your owner starts getting involved, that's when you got to sit back and go, there's a lot more going on with this situation than I think that we really actually know. I saw this crazy stat via ESPN, which Carolina's offensive efficiency rating was .70 through 2 games. That ranks last out of 608 instances for weeks 1 to 2 since it was first tracked in 2006. And they have converted 2 of 22 third down opportunities. That is worse than the NFL. When you are statistically the worst offense in the NFL, all the way back since 2006 in a 2-game sample size, that's got to be really, really hard to deal with. And I know Bryce Young is a good college quarterback, but man, oh man, I was feeling a lot more confident going into this game with Bryce Young as the QB now that I am with Andy Dalton. But here's the question, and this is going to be the ad pin on today's show, which means I'm going to put this as the number one top comment on this video. And if you watch this show, I want you to answer this. So you're about to get hit with the YouTube ad break. I want you to scroll on down and give me your answer. What is your confidence level in the Raiders to beat the Panthers this week? 1, you're not confident at all. 10, it's a lock that we're going to win. The number that I'm going to give you is a 6 because I think the Raiders have not shown you enough that you can go any higher than that. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. If Bryce Young was the quarterback, I might put that bad boy as an 8. But I hope Antonio Pierce, Tom Telesco, Luke Getsy, Max Crosby, all the leaders on that team go, hey, you can't take anything for granted in the NFL. When you do, you might blow a 10-point lead with 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Let's go to reason number 2 here, why it's bad news that the Carolina Panthers benched Bryce Young. The Raiders have no tape on the Panthers offense right now. I'm a big person where I always say, like, if a QB gets hurt and then you got to put somebody else in, my mind instantly goes to, remember a few years ago when Derek Carr got injured, running out of bounds, he got that groin injury, and then Marcus Mariota had to come into the game, and they had to, the Chargers had to figure out Mariota. Even though the Raiders lost that game, Mariota looked like he was in his bag. Why? Because they had no tape on him. And right now, the only tape that we can use, if you're a coaching staff, is the tape that the Panthers have put on display week 1 and week 2. You kind of almost have to throw that out because now you're having a totally different quarterback. So for a team that already doesn't have a lot of tape in terms of sample size, you got to probably go back to last season and look what Andy Dalton did. But again, totally different regime in a sense. It makes this challenging a little bit more, and I don't think people understand when you don't have tape in the NFL, when you're at this high of a level, how difficult it makes that entire situation. Before I get into reasons 3, 4, and 5, because there are some really big reasons of why you should be nervous that the Panthers just benched Bryce Young, I do got to talk about our awesome sponsor, Game Time. How many Raider fans out there are going to the game this weekend? If you're going to the game this weekend, I want you to spam Las Vegas down below in the comments section because there's a lot of stuff to do out in Vegas. And if you are going to the game, or if you're not going to the game yet, I might be able to change your mind. I love going to watch Raiders football games when I can, and I can remember my first game in Oakland. That was the FAB game, and the atmosphere there was one of the biggest reasons why I'm a Raider fan right now. There is nothing like an Oakland tailgate. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Again, it's CHATSPORTS, that's CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, one thing that they got going on right now is their Game Time picks. And Game Time picks are them telling you, here are the best deals at this football game. When I look at tickets, I like to be able to see like what it looks like if I was actually sitting in the seat. I also like to know exactly where I'm going to be. Do I want to sit behind the home team? Do I want to sit behind the away team? Do I want to be near the goalpost? All those things go into the equation. But the cool part about Las Vegas is there's so much to do. Like, for me personally, when Chugs and I go out to Vegas, we don't book anything because we're like, well, we'll go on Game Time 2 hours before an event. Maybe there's an hour before a comedy event. And I'm like, yo, Chugs, you want to go to this thing? We get the tickets at a low price because what they know is they don't want to have the empty seat. They know that if you go to that event, you're going to buy food. You're going to buy, I don't know, drinks. Maybe you get a souvenir. So they're going to try to get you in that seat with the lowest deal possible. Game Time's here to hook you up. So if anybody's going out to Vegas now, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, hell, you can use this even in your own city. Like if you're planning on going on a trip anywhere, download the Game Time app, $20 off with code CHATSPORTS. You don't just have to go watch NFL games. You can go create a lot of memories, and I love Game Time because it's not just a place where you go buy tickets for NFL games. You go to these events, you create those lasting memories, which is a lot longer than 3 to 4 hours. You're going to remember those memories for the rest of your life. I can still remember to this day the very first game I went to with my dad when Mike Piazza hit a 2-run home run against Sammy Sosa and the Chicago Cubs. That's something that I will live with forever. Why? Because we went to that event. Create those memories and use it with Game Time. Let's go to reason number 3, why it's bad news. Andy Dalton has torched the Raiders in his career. I've seen some people say, Mitch, Andy Dalton is 4-0 against the Raiders. It's technically true. It's technically not true. So if you look up how many times has Andy Dalton beat the Raiders on Google, it does tell you he's 4-0. But they're giving him a win in a game that he threw one pass for 8 yards. I would say legitimately Andy Dalton is 3-0 against the Las Vegas Raiders all time, and he's got a passer rating of 114.2. I'll admit some of these games are a little bit longer ago when the Red Rifle was at his peak with the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals were, one of the better football teams. But here's the thing, though. I am a career stats guy, and sometimes there's certain players that have the number of other teams. I also don't know if you guys remember this game. This is the game where the Raiders did not cross midfield. Did not cross midfield. He was the quarterback of that one. But, a career 67.4% completion percentage, 716 yards. He's sitting right there around 240 yards a game, 7 touchdowns, has never thrown an interception against the Las Vegas Raiders. That does make me nervous. So the fact that you're going up against somebody that you have no tape on, somebody who is an NFL veteran quarterback, and somebody who's never lost to the Raiders, it does. It makes me nervous. Here we go. why it's also more bad news that he was benched, Bryce Young, and Andy Dalton's getting the start. Dalton has been good in these instances before, where, Mitch, what do you mean by that? I think for you to be able to last as long as what Andy Dalton has been able to last in the NFL, where he really hasn't been a starter, but he's a reliable backup. Teams value good backup quarterbacks. It's one of the reasons why I was happy when the Raiders went out and got Gardner, because I was like, no matter what, we're going to have a good backup QB, whether that be Gardner, whether that be Aiden O'Connell. But when you look at the numbers recently, because this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at recent numbers where the starting quarterback went down, and Andy Dalton the following game, okay? Just like this situation, Bryce Young bench, Andy Dalton playing against the Raiders. In the last 2 years, I want to say the last 2 years, this has happened. And Andy Dalton has played well. Now, I'll admit, the Seahawks beat Dalton and the Panthers 37-27 in this game, but Dalton was 34 of 58, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. That was last year against the Seattle Seahawks. Then, in 2022, when he was a member of the New Orleans Saints, when Jameis Winston went down earlier in the season, he was 20 of 28, 236 yards, a touchdown, and interception. Again, they lost that football game, 28-25. My bigger point is this. Andy Dalton is a veteran QB who has a good relationship with the Carolina Panthers head coach right now, and there's a reason why they're making this move. Think about what has to be happening inside of that team, inside of that locker room for that to happen. And then he's also been able to show that coaching staff that I can do this and I can beat this team. I've never lost to this team, and I've been able to go out there and play at a high level when you put me in these situations. That's why a guy like Andy Dalton continues to last in the NFL. The final reason is players, coaches, I shouldn't say coaches. I only know that players were begging Carolina people to bench Bryce Young. I did find it interesting that Carolina's head coach, I want to say, said Bryce Young is our quarterback. 24 hours later, he was benched. That tells me that David Tepper said, hey, we got to change this up a little bit. We got to go a little bit of a different route here. And when you follow a lot of the people that cover Carolina, to me, the best person that covers the Panthers is Joe Person. He's for The Athletic. He does a phenomenal job. And this is what he said on September 15th. If Dave Canales keeps playing Bryce Young, he risks alienating the locker room and the fan base and further bludgeoning Young's confidence. So what I want to do is always put myself in the other team's shoes. And I think for a Raider fan right now, it might not be the exact same thing, but I think we also know what kind of like recently what's happening here, right? Where the Raiders last season had a head coach that nobody believed in at all. And everyone's saying, fire Josh McDaniels. If the Raiders fire McDaniels, we're going to go live for 24 straight hours. You get to a point where your locker room gets split, your fan base gets split, and you got to look at it for them like, hey, man, this is a business. For them to get to a point where it's that bad, where you are benching your number 1 overall pick after you traded the entire world to go out and get him, if there's one silver lining here for the Raiders, it's people might say the biggest NFL draft bust of all time is no longer Jamarcus Russell. I think people are going to say it's going to be Bryce Young if he doesn't work out because of everything Carolina gave up to go get him. So in conclusion, the Panthers benching Bryce Young for Andy Dalton, I do. I think it's bad news for the Raiders for all those reasons that I just illustrated right there. LV, we need to be ready. If the Raiders are not ready to go for this game, I'm telling you right now, if you think you're going to be able to walk all over Carolina and you're going to look forward to the Browns in week 4, you're going to lose this football game. You got to be ready to go. So if you're a Raiders fan and you're going to Allegiant Stadium, I need y'all to be loud and proud the way we were in that fourth quarter against the Baltimore Ravens. That game gave me chills. But I know this, as happy as I was that the Raiders came back and beat Baltimore, I also know as upset as I was that the Raiders lost to the Chargers. If the Raiders show up in their home opener at Allegiant Stadium, Antonio Pierce's first game as the Raiders head coach, and we lose to the worst team in the National Football League entering that week, there's going to be a lot of panic here. It's going to be from me. It's going to be from you. So I hope AP, Telesco, Crosby, Minshew, Adams, if you wear a C on your chest, if you're rocking silver and black, you better be ready to go for this football game. Because Carolina's going to come out and they're going to play inspired. Just like the Raiders went out and they played inspired football up against the New York Giants last season after firing McDaniels, where we were up 24-0 at halftime, won that game 30-6. That's going to be Carolina this week. This is their Super Bowl. They're going to come out and give you their best. They're going to give you their A game. And if you're not ready in the NFL, you will lose. So my ask is this. Got to show up. Got to be ready to go. Let's get a win. Let's go to 2-1.